Hello, this is Steve Wiseman at the Peterson Institute for International Economics. I'm here today with Ted Truman of the Institute, who has written a new policy brief. The authors are Sarah Stone and Ted Truman on sovereign wealth funds, which have played an increasingly important role in the international economic scene. Ted has been working on doing scoreboards for these funds over the last 10 years, and his new policy brief updates the scoreboard this year. Ted, first of all, tell us what are sovereign wealth funds and why are they such a big deal?
Sovereign wealth funds are government-owned investment vehicles who invest to a large extent outside their country, and therefore they have some impact on the international financial system. The total assets under management are around $6 trillion these days. And four of them are more than $500 billion in size.
So they're big players, and how many countries did you study?
I think we have 60 funds this time, and I think my memory is there are 43 countries have funds. There's some countries, like the United States, actually has 7 funds at the state level.
Now, you've been tracking their accountability and transparency. Why are those issues important?
Well, my view is that they're very important because these are funds which are run by governments on behalf of the citizens of the country, and their impact can impact the citizens of the world. And so both sets of citizens and associated governments want to know how they're run, more about them, how big they are, what the returns are, where they invest their money, and what kind of rules they use to invest their funds.
So you've set up criteria for your scoreboard. How many criteria did you establish?
We have 33 elements. This time we actually expanded 2 elements to look a little more deeply, but basically we have 33 elements.
And how have they done over time in achieving the goals of transparency?
Well, they have improved. The core funds that we had we first did this scored about 45%. On a scale of 100, and they moved up to 70%, so around 70%. So there's been a big adjustment, and almost all the funds have increased their transparency, and therefore accountability over these period.
I would say in part because of studies like yours.
Well, of course.
There's more pressure on them, right?
We take credit for that, and indeed the initial scoreboard helped to motivate the establishment of what's called the Santiago Principles, which is a group of principles that a subset of these funds, about half of them, they adhere to, associated with the International Forum of Sovereign Wealth Funds.
So let's look at some cases. If they've improved on average over time, who has done the best in that regard? Well,
the improvements are, I mean, some of them are very interesting. Some have all been scoring very well all along, like Norway or New Zealand's fund, always up at the top, or even in Alaska's fund. One of the surprising funds, even from the start, was the fund of Azerbaijan.
Surprising because?
Well, I don't think we associate Azerbaijan and that part of the world with a high degree of transparency.
So what about the big funds that we think of?
So they're a little more disappointing. So the 4 biggest funds, the ones that have more than $500 billion in estimated assets, score only 74 relative to an average of 62 for everything, and several of those are the one that really pulls it up is Norway, which is the biggest fund. But
what about the Gulf?
And those don't do so. The United Arab Emirates fund is Abu Dhabi fund, the ADIA, fund, the ADIA scores at 58. So it's below the average, even though its score has improved from the beginning from single digits to 58. So they're a little disappointing.
What are the biggest disappointments?
Well, the biggest disappointments in that sense are countries like ADIA and even Singapore, which was a big mover and shaker in this area. Its government, now GIC private it's called, used to be Government Investment Corporation, scores just at the average. So you would think that Singapore would do much higher. Another fund in Singapore does somewhat better, Temasek, which actually pulled out of the forum. It doesn't really consider itself a sovereign wealth fund, but we score it that way.
Right.
It's a sort of government holding company, and it scores more highly at 76. So it's a very mixed bag.
So your conclusion in this policy brief is that they most, if not all, can do a better job, and also at self-policing or setting best practices.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's been uneven progress. That's what we use, Sarah and I use in our title. Uneven progress. The good news is there's been progress, and the bad news is it's uneven. And it's important for international public opinion and domestic public opinion, it should be led by this International Forum of Sovereign Wealth Funds, to promote this this kind of activity.
So Ted Truman, thanks very much. And for viewers and listeners out there, come to our website and look at the full policy brief and the scoreboard so you can rate or see how your favorite sovereign wealth fund fits into to this scoreboard prepared by Sarah Stone and Ted Truman. Thanks very much.